Thanks for TMC for sponsoring this event. This is a great way to get entrepreneurs and venture capital together to talk about this topic. About 10 years ago, I was in an audience in the front row, and I got to hear a gentleman by the name of Bob Thacker tell a story. Bob, if you're familiar with the brand Target, the reason you're familiar with Target is Bob Thacker. And he was up on the stage, and at the time he was the chief marketing officer for Target. He said, don't make ads, make news. And that really resounded with me, and I said, all right, that's interesting. I don't want to market to people, I want to make something that's newsworthy. And then he said, forget that, scratch that. He said, don't make news, make history. Do something that's never been done before, because that's going to make news, it's going to get you attention, it's going to do whatever you want it to do, but make history, do something that's profound. And so that burned in me for a couple years, and I was at the time marketing a product and taking it from the UK over into the retail market in the US. And I was reading a book by an individual named Martin Lindstrom, who also spoke at that same conference. And Martin said, the book was called Brand Sense. And he said, if your brand is about touch, add smell. If your brand is about taste, add feel. So he basically said, if you want to touch the consumers, add another sense to your brand. And at the time, I was working on a visual marketing program. And I said, what can I do to change this product, to do something that's never been done before, in Bob's words, and make something that people would really resound with? And so I said, well, I'm going to take this visual marketing program, and I'm going to add scent to it. I'm going to make it a scratch and sniff, because it's never been done before. And I was researching glass microspheres and their ability to break in the right time and put scented particles in it. And at the same time, one of my biggest clients, one of our biggest relationships, called us up and said, we're running a campaign, but it's around scent, and we were wondering if you had anything that we could print that we could add scent to. And I said, tell them yes. And we had a press that was a $7 million flexographic print press that was really kind of state of the art, and it said, we can add this scent to it. So make a long story short, in 2007, Harrods of London took this product that we had created and smashed these two things together. And 2.3 million people walked out of Harrods of London with this new signature scent. And it really caught people's attention. And it drove sales for this product going forward. So that is a real thing, and it's something that really burned in me. Today, I work at a firm called MPR Associates. We're a product development firm based in Alexandria, Virginia. And our legacy is that our founders invented the nuclear submarine. So Mandel, Panoff, and Rockwell were the three chief engineers for Admiral Rickover back in the 1950s. And they created something that had never been done before in the nuclear submarine. And it's sustained our company for decades. So now we're 50 years old. For the last 30 years, we've also been doing medical device development. And today I get to work with some of the most premier medical device manufacturers in the world, helping them to solve their biggest problems. I've been called a change maker, I've been called a catalyst, a connector, and that's what I like to do. I like to take two seemingly disparate things, smash them together, and create a new product. And I've gotten to do that several times with several teams that have won awards for these game changers that have never been done before. And I'm very excited today because I have now 250 engineers that I get to work with that can produce these wonderful new products that have not existed before. And so I'm challenging you today to be a change agent in this, with this lens right here. So the triple aim, as some of the individual presenters have mentioned before, is to lower per capita costs, increase the health of a population, and increase the experience of care for that patient, right? So how do we do that? And it's simply taking two seemingly disparate things, connecting them together, and making something that hasn't existed before. And right now, we're in the middle of a massive collision between the technology industry and the healthcare industry. And it's so exciting to be part of this today. So if you're a student in the room, you get to see this and have a front seat view of this collision as it happens in real time. So I try to picture this as in 4 billion years, astronomers say that these two galaxies, Andromeda and the Milky Way galaxy, are going to be colliding. And it's going to take 260 million years to occur. Now let's hope that this healthcare collision is going to take a little bit less time than that, because we don't have that much resources. But what's going to happen is when these things come together, they're not just going to collide. They're not just going to create a bunch of explosions and fireworks. There's so much negative space between these two galaxies that they're going to exist together. They'll create new solar systems and new galaxies, and there will be some explosions, but it's going to be a lot more peaceful than you'd imagine. So what I'm inviting you to do today is to think about this as a model for how these two industries go together. And it's really a very collaborative process. There's a lot of venues out there today. Right down the street in Cambridge, there's the Johnson & Johnson Innovation Center, there's J-Labs. Robert Urban is very good at inviting people in for events, students, entrepreneurs, investors, chemists, scientists, doctors, lawyers, and then we all go in for a lunch on Thursdays, the first Thursday of the month, called Imagine If We Could. And it's one of the places where these collisions take place. It's one of the places where these sparks happen. And I'm challenging you today to be a catalyst in these conversations because you bring something to the table that can change the future. So let's look, we've got new stakeholders in this today. The way purchasing happened in the past is not happening the way it does today. As we mentioned, it's more value for service, fee for service, and the buyers have changed from the doctors and the hospitals to the patients, the payers, and group purchasing organizations. That the hospitals have much more buying power than they did in the past. So that's going to be another one of those catalysts that happen as we go through this change. When we talk about mental models, there's incubators all over the country now. We've gotten to play with a few of them recently. These are some that I've visited in the last couple of years that we've interacted with. I sit on the board of advisors at M2D2. I see some individuals from M2D2 here today. Thanks for coming. Health Wildcatters down in Dallas. Mass Challenge here in Boston. J-Labs, 1776. They've spread from DC all over the country. WeWork, there's workspaces that entrepreneurs can set up around the country. So these are very exciting places, and you see these collisions happening when you walk through the building. So I invite you to go in, be part of these experiences, get a tour, meet some startup companies. If you're a student, these are great places and fertile ground for these collisions to occur. So these incubators are almost like planets, and they've got moons that orbit them, and there's a way that you can connect those dots and participate in this ecosystem if you just reach out. And so this convergence is happening right now in front of us. And I'll give you an example. So recently on a flight from DC to New York, I was sitting in the gate and I was waiting to get on my flight. And I saw this guy at the gate, and he was talking to his grandkids, and they were saying bye to him. And he was getting on a plane and headed up north. And I said, this guy looks really familiar. He looked almost like Jesse Ventura from WWF, governor of Minnesota. Bald head, large gentleman. I said, that guy looks so familiar. I've seen him before. Maybe he was on TV. And as I get on the plane, I see him again, and it's retired 5-star General Odierno. And this guy's a legend. You watch this State of the Union, and he's right there in the front row as the former chief of staff. And he's kind of a big deal. And so as I walked by him, I nodded to him. I recognized that who he was. And I saw sitting across from him Martin Dempsey, another retired 5-star general. And I said, am I on the wrong plane? This is kind of making me nervous now. But I talked to the flight attendant. I said, do you realize you have 2 retired 5-star generals that are up in the front row here? I said, can you pass them this note? And at the time, I'd been working on a team. We had launched a product with one of our clients called ITC, an Innovative Trauma Clamp. These guys have a cool hemostatic clamp for gunshot wounds, and I just happen to have one in my bag. And these are the kind of collisions. These are the kind of collisions that I want to create because it creates a conversation and it gets this product out into the masses so they can use this product faster. So when I travel, I usually have one of these on me. And so I said, General Odierno, I really like what you said about not pulling troops out of Iraq, and I agree with you on that. And I just want a minute of your time after the flight. And I sent him this note, and she delivered it, and he waited outside the gate. And so I had a chance to talk to him, and I said, this is a product that our client had designed, and it's an innovative trauma clamp. It goes on your pack. Right now, it's being tested by Special Forces. You've got Marines, SEAL Team 6, Rangers, Green Berets that are using this in combat today to save lives. And a brilliant doctor by the name of Dennis Phillips created this because he was a trauma surgeon, and we'd get patients to him, but they'd get there too slow. They wouldn't get there in time, and they'd bleed out. So bleeding is a big problem right now. And so he created this, and then with our team, made it functional and better and cheaper and easier to use. So you pull it off your pack, you pull it out with one hand, and you arm it. And then you can clamp it on a gunshot wound, and it immediately stops the bleeding. So this solved the problem for dentists, so he could get those patients to him in critical care, and he could stitch them up and save lives. So far, 220 lives have been saved with this. And that's all I did for General Odierno. And he said, wow, Jeff, he's like, I appreciate you stopping me today. I'm not the person you need to talk to, but you need to get in touch with Nadja West. She's the Attorney General, the Surgeon General, and she's going to connect you to the people that can make decisions on how to get this into the hands of the people that need it. And so that was just one small collision that leads to other conversations that happen all the time. And as entrepreneurs, as CEOs, that's your job, is to create these collisions with investors, with people in your ecosystem that are going to inspire you to do something next, right? If you're an investor, I challenge you to create those collisions by writing a check, by getting in touch with people that are passionate about saving lives and getting behind them and being a catalyst for that change that needs to happen in our industry. So map out your ecosystem. What does your ecosystem look like? This is what mine looks like today. Large companies, medium-sized companies, capital resources, startup companies, universities and academia, service providers, hospital groups. In order to be an entrepreneur, you have to be part of that ecosystem. You have to have all those things working for you, all those resources. You can't do it insulated in one room with 4 people and expect to change the world. You need to reach out. You need to be part of these ecosystems and these collisions that happen. So I like to look at art as a way of creating these new things. And if you are familiar with the series Star Trek, I'm not a Trekkie, but it's something that I think is worthy of mentioning. These are all the different things that have come from the show Star Trek over the decades and created entire industries just coming from that one show. This is back in the 1960s. Lasers, flat panels, tricorders. You see Qualcomm's $10 million tricorder challenge. We've got clients that are competing in that and having fun, and we're creating these tricorders with them. But where are we going to find the inspiration for the future? And it's in art. Where are we going? If you watch J.J. Abrams or other shows that are out right now, Neil Blomkamp, this was from Elysium. This is a scanner that looks at all your atoms and realigns them. These things are coming, folks. I mean, you look at Talon, and you're able to edit DNA today. That's preposterous. Well, you can do it today with chemical reactions and replace gene sequences. If you look at J.J. Abrams' new series, Westworld, there's a movie in the 1970s that showed how they made humanoids with artificial intelligence that you could create this whole environment for humans to interact in. These are the places that our entrepreneurs and doctors that are watching these shows today are going to be creating these. There's a show that came out on CBS this week. I don't know if you guys have seen it, Pure Genius. Have you guys seen that show? Go out and watch it. It's a fascinating show. It talks about what you're doing in the room right now. It talks about these collisions that are made on purpose to create the future of medical technology. It talks about this, the large tech billionaires that are coming in with resources to fund your businesses. Get in touch with them. They want to know about what you're doing. If you don't think so, look at all the different relationships that have formed recently. You watch Philips or Salesforce.com. Why are they getting together? They're getting together because they have the resources to make these changes occur. This is a pretty cool group that I just joined up with as an advisor. This is Regenerate USA. It includes Wake Forest and a couple other large universities, industry groups, and this is one of those collisions. So it's industry, it's government and academia getting together to take things from market-ready level 1 through 3 to market-ready level 8 through 10 in a very rapid process to vet these technologies, to test these technologies, to develop these technologies, because regenerative medicine is one of the places the government wants to place bets. And so this is a $70 million opportunity to interact in that collision. And so I got really excited about it. We've done some really cool things in stem cell research, and this is one of the places where I want to stake a claim in the next few years. So things that you're going to see taking over, as you've heard today: machine learning, additive manufacturing. Get used to this. This is R2R MEMS. So because these MEMS fabrications are so small on this level, you've got to produce them in a way that's cost efficient. And so some of our friends, and I'll show you one specifically, is looking to produce these things like film is produced or like printing is done, reel to reel, super fast. But when you're working in small, it's tiny, tiny fabs, you can do this in a way that's efficient and really saves a lot of costs in manufacturing. Living polymers, polymer chameleons, biomaterials, 3D printing for personalized instrumentation. If you go to get a hearing aid made today, it's 3D printed, molded right to your ear. You're going to see a lot more of that. You'll go into a Minute Clinic and a CVS, and you might need a part for some wearable that you've got, and you'll have it 3D printed right there to fit your ear. These things are coming. They're going to happen. Get used to it and participate in it. It's really exciting stuff. Virtual consultations, biomarkers for anything you can imagine. Nanoscale. Scale is a huge driver of innovation today, and we'll talk about a couple examples. Talon, microfluidics, all these things that are coming, they're here, and they're taking over. So technology convergence to medical devices, there's a few examples here. This is typically an hour-and-a-half workshop that I do, so I had to kind of crunch it to fit into this space today. But if you want to talk about some of these specifics afterwards, from connectivity to 3D printing, augmented reality, as a connector in this space, I look to be aware of a lot of different things that are happening. I make a lot of introductions, and I try to create as many of these collisions as possible. This is a company that we're working with today. It's an artificial pancreas for the ICU. This group is called Admetsis, and they actually invited me to come share with you today. This is an advanced metabolic system that takes patients who are in the ICU, 80% of whom are diabetic, and puts them on autopilot. So while they're in the ICU, they don't have to worry about their diabetes because this keeps their glucose between 80 and 100 milligrams per deciliter, and monitors there. So within 3 hours, they fall into this loop, and it monitors everything. If they're low and they're going hypoglycemic, it gives them glucagon. If they're going high, it gives them insulin, and it keeps them in a very tight range. So what does this do? This collision of technology and metabolic function. Essentially what it does is it cuts down on the need for nurses to do a finger prick every hour. So they're supposed to do it every hour. They do it every 2.6 hours now. That's a fail on our system, and it's not scalable. So today, they're checking every 12 minutes, and the accuracy and the control is up by 67%, and it reduced those severe hypoglycemic episodes, saving 34% of these patients' lives. That means because of this technology, 1 in 3 people who would not be here otherwise are now surviving the ICU and recovering much faster. It reduces complications by 40 to 50% at a rate of $100,000 per incident. That's a huge cost savings for the healthcare system. And then it also reduces the stay in that ICU by 1.8 days, another $8,000 savings. So by using these technologies, slamming them together, and then creating something that works and functions and is validated with that real science, these are the results. And it's very exciting to participate in. So, you've seen all these different things, size, nanoscale, the Micra from Medtronic, absolutely fascinating pacemaker that's the size of a nickel, smaller than a nickel, and gives you the ability to control that patient and reduce complications. It's absolutely fascinating. We didn't work on this, but it's one of the examples that I wanted to show you today of where to aspire. Our client who was working on that tricorder, they said, well, we can do all these measurements, and it's going to take a minute. We'll do 10 different measurements and give you all these different diagnostics. I said, it's got to take 10 seconds. If it doesn't take 10 seconds, I don't want to participate in it. I'm not going to sit there for a minute and hold this up, because a nurse could be doing those in the same amount of time. So let's get excited. Let's push the boundaries of what's happening. Let's go out and find the solutions that are going to get you to something that's going to really make a difference. Cpap's another size example. ResMed's Cpap has even gotten smaller than it was in the past. Those of you that have sleep apnea, you're familiar with a big mask. It looks like you're going to go fly a fighter jet. And Respironics came and they made a more discreet pass at it. So they have something that's not necessarily hoseless, but it just goes in your nose, and it's a little bit more of a discreet device. And then there's this new one that just came on the market that was crowdfunded to date, right? So they've got almost $2 million in crowdfunding from a startup campaign, and that's because the users of these devices are getting so excited that they can actually push a button and contribute to the future of their treatment. So this airing device uses micropumps from cell phones and the automotive industry, and these MEMS sensors to create these little billows, and they open and close with an electric charge. And when you stack hundreds of them on top of each other, you actually create airflow. And I'm very excited that this is actually happening today. They're creating airflow using these little micro pumps. So this conceptual product on the bottom right will be a reality in a few years. It's not going to happen overnight, but the proof of concept is well underway, and it's being proven to actually work. And it was crowdfunded. So there's lots of different ways in which entrepreneurs and inventors are getting together and making things like this happen. And Stefan's also a friend. I got to meet him after I saw a video on this. I said, I've got to meet that guy. I've got to participate in this and somehow help him get funded to go the distance. So these are some of the other interesting connections. Google and Sanofi, Philips and Salesforce. Down in Dallas recently, I met an individual named Scott Smith. He's part of Socrates Health up there in the front. And if you think that non-invasive glucose monitoring is not happening, he got up on stage and he was pitching that day. And for those of you that are pitching later today, I have to tell you, demos are the way to go. Do something that really captures the audience's attention immediately. Scott got up on stage and he said, this is what diabetics have to do every day. He said, he pricked his finger, he's bleeding on stage. Right there he wins the audience's attention anyway. But he said, he took the strip, he put it in his glucose meter and he said, I'm at 160. And it was a very visual presentation. He said 160. He said, but I want to show you what I've got. And he pulled out this little earpiece and he clipped it on his ear and he had his monitor and he said 160. And he said, that's how easy it's going to be in the future to measure your glucose, and we've already done it. So right there, he won the competition, he got a big check, and he was the first one to present. And I was like, how's anybody going to follow that? So be very poignant with your demos, and when you demonstrate to the audience, win them over first in their mind and help them dream with you, and they'll get out their checkbooks and show you the future. So with that, I'll give you one more example of something that I think is really worth mentioning. There's a bunch of others that I'd like to share with you, but we don't have time. These are exercises that we do to actually take these and create these mashups, right? So you take a problem, any problem, and you create a matrix with all the different possible solutions. Think about all the different things in your ecosystem and just randomly match them together. Serendipity is one of my favorite words, and it means the connection of two seemingly disparate points. When you're immersed in this healthcare industry and you see all these different things happening around you, you start to see these points, these patterns that emerge, and these potential collisions that you can create. Be that dot in the middle of those collisions. They can pull those things together, and you're going to be a big change maker. This is a group called Cressalon. And I got to meet this brilliant young entrepreneur in New York the other day. His name is Joe Landolina. And he started making polymers on his family's vineyard in a chemistry lab when he was like 13 or 14 years old. When he was 17, he realized that he could take algae from their pond and make it into a polymer, and he started playing with these reactions. But he also started tweaking it so that it would turn from a liquid to a solid almost instantly. And what Joe figured out is that he could use this to create a fibrin patch over a wound and seal up a wound instantly. So if you haven't, write that name down and go watch his video. He's done several TED Talks. He's a brilliant young scientist. He's 23 years old today. He's setting up a 15,000 square foot CGMP facility in Brooklyn, of all places, to manufacture this stuff in bulk. And he's got a huge industry in veterinary that is just chomping at the bit for his product. So another one of those collisions. But Joe realized that at 17, went to NYU, and now has a great product, a great team, and all the investors under him to put wind in his sails. So that's my presentation for today. I hope you enjoyed it. What I will say is these are the things that I need you to do when you go out of here. Create as many collisions as you can. Have a front row seat and watch them merge together. And then one of the parts about this that makes it really important is you have to have a heterogeneous group of people. You cannot have 4 engineers in a room and expect to solve the world's problems. You can't have 5 lawyers and expect that you're going to overcome contracts. You've got to get creative, and you have to have a heterogeneous group with a lot of different experiences together. And that's where these collisions are really important. So, and then there's no right answers. Go broad, go wide, and then capture everything. Think about it, get back together, and mingle, and give me a call if you need any help. All right? So thank you very much.